go ahead and call this meeting to order. So what I would like to do, we're going to make a few adjustments tonight. We are going to move item 7 to the next meeting, and item 5 to the next meeting. I will be moving up item 9 after item number 2. So I'll direct as we're going. First and foremost, I'd like to know if there's any members of the public who would like to speak today. Thank you. Okay, you have 3 minutes, and I will call you up and let you know who's on deck. First speaker is Laura Perez, and on deck is Esther Fonseca. So, Ms. Perez, if you could come on up.
Good afternoon. I came this evening because I was told that you guys would be addressing the prostitution issue that we have on our streets. We're being harassed on a nightly basis, and I brought a few pictures. And Mr. Graminsky, is that your daughter back there? Is that appropriate to show her? Are those pictures appropriate to show her? I would really honestly like to know if these pictures,
ma'am, during public comment, during public comment
to show your daughter.
During public comments, our officers or staff do not respond.
Okay. So I'm going to go show her these pictures because I don't think it's appropriate that our children are being exposed to this. Do you agree? Your officers are telling us that they're clothed. How is that being clothed right here? Tell me how that is being clothed. Walking around in G-strings. I don't see how that's acceptable. It's been 2 months that we had a meeting, and these girls are literally standing outside of that building where we had this meeting. I am pissed, I have anxiety, and I'm tired of this. And for your officers to be telling me that they can't do anything and it's taking 2 hours to respond to an assault call is unacceptable. Meanwhile, your dispatchers are telling me that it's not appropriate and it's not allowed for us to defend our households when the girls are running into our property, that it's illegal to use pepper spray on them to protect our properties. I don't understand how that's acceptable. I'm done. I should be suing the city and the police department over this. Our kids are dying. Sir, we already brought this up. Children are getting STDs from picking up all the needles and the trash, and I don't understand what it's going to take for these girls to be taken off the streets. It's not acceptable. I'm going to show your daughter these pictures, because if it's acceptable for her to see this, then obviously that's the standard for the rest of the kids in our community. It's not fair. I am a taxpayer, I am a resident, and I love this city, but I don't accept criminals anymore. I am sick and tired of these people. And for those that are running again for mayor, sir, it took you 5 years to come to a Santa Anita neighborhood meeting. I don't understand. Your attendance since 2013 was noted, and it's public records, and you didn't show up until we asked you to come 2 months ago. The lights are not working. The police officers are screaming from across the street to tell the girls to shut up and to keep it low instead of patrolling the streets. I don't get it. Putting the high beams is effective if we're in our cars and the girls scramble. I don't understand why cops are telling us that they can't be standing on the streets, that they can't show the lights on these people. I don't get it. I'm tired. I'm sick and tired of this. Meanwhile, Vice doesn't exist. You call the dispatcher and they only work Monday through Friday. That's what we're being told. That no one is patrolling and it's taking 1 hour to 2 hours for anyone to come out. So I have video, I have pictures, and I don't know what else to present.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Next speaker is Esther Fonseca, followed by, I think it's Mr. Eric, is it Null? Mull? Okay, thank you.
Sorry. I'm short, but not that short. That's fine, thank you. I think that's fine. Good evening. This is a brief status update regarding the loud and raucous noise ordinance. Ruby Wu and I first met with then Deputy Chief Valentin and then Commander Gominski on December 7, 2016, almost 2 years ago. The meeting was concerning the current policy and lack of enforcement by Santa Ana PD officers regarding loud music/party calls. Because of the continued complete lack of departmental enforcement of the policy regarding these calls, I brought the issue to this committee's attention on January the 9th, 2018, a year later. A subcommittee was formed to address this issue. Beginning in January, we have met 3 times to address this problem. The department's policy is that on the first call, if the officer determines there is a violation, the responsible party is contacted, their name and date of birth is taken, and the officer asks them to stop the music. The officer then documents the responsible party information and action taken, for example, a verbal warning issued in the premise entry information. On the second call, the officers are directed to issue citations and force compliance with the noise elimination. According to the dictionary, to direct means to order someone to do something. That is, the officer is ordered to issue a citation. Note that this is not left to the officer's discretion. 1, not multiple warnings is to be given, then a citation issued. In the approximately 2 years I have been working on this, I have identified the problem as follows. With the exception of one call in a 22-month period, there has been a complete and total lack of compliance by Santa Ana PD officers with the required premise entry documentation by the first, second, third, and even the fourth officer or officers responding to calls in one evening at one location, and a complete and total lack of any citations being issued. On July the 28th, one Santa Ana PD officer did his job and actually issued a citation on the second call I made regarding a neighbor having a party with a live band in his driveway. Regarding the most recent calls for service, last night, Sunday, 9:30, loud music party reported. Oh, okay. Just substantially, on Saturday, 9/22, the officers are refusing, they're not complying with the premise entry. No information is on some of these calls. No information whatsoever is being entered by the responding party. I have documented many of these calls. What Santa Ana PD has done to address these problems, basically a set of 3 different reminders have been issued by the department. And again, as effective last night, the officers are still not responding. Okay, for all intents and purposes, these reminders are worthless. The officers are simply appearing to ignore them. Compliance is not being obtained by the command staff, as there are no consequences to the officers refusing to comply. They will only comply with the premise entry requirement and will begin to issue citations only when a directive, that is an official order, and not a reminder, is issued by the chief requiring compliance and some type of progressive discipline for non-compliance. Because I don't have any more time left, I'm going to ask, please, excuse me. Chairman Tinajero, I now ask you as chair of this committee, where do we go from here? We have a situation for 2 years now. 1 citation issued, sir. 1 citation issued by this department. Meanwhile, we have to live with this situations, live bands, constantly live party music, even up until last night, sir. What direction should we take now?
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thanks. Next speaker is Eric Mull. On deck is also Charles Walter.
Good evening. Raise this up a little bit. I'd like to be able to come to one of these meetings and tell you guys I haven't had a fire within 50 feet of my house in the last few weeks. This is the third time I've had to speak at these meetings about fires in our backyard. We live on Santiago Creek on West Park Lane. I have actually, I don't know, I should be a firefighter by now because I've actually fought 3 fires in my yard since April. I've had to climb the fence to fight the last fire. It took the fire department about 20 minutes to get there, a little bit longer than usual. What are we doing about the issues with the homeless people in Santiago Creek? Does somebody's house need to be burned down? Does somebody need to get injured? During this last fire, the neighbor's teenager came over to help us fight the fire, and he got smoke inhalation. I don't know what we can do. We've talked about putting the fences up at the park, and I don't know when that's going to happen. I'm hoping it's going to happen soon. That'll help a little bit, but we also need those fences included at the Broad Street Bridge, where the trail to nowhere needs to be capped off so that the people don't feel like this is a nature walk, that they are allowed to be back there. Most of the property back there is private property, from what I understand. And it's very dangerous for homeless people to be back there. For fires, this happened to be an encampment fire. I called on this encampment twice. I know other neighbors have called on it several times. I don't know what kind of response is going to there if they're actually investigating the encampment. But the encampment had a battery in it. I took pictures. The person was lighting or cooking meth. I don't know what. But it started in the exact encampment that I had called up about twice. So let's do something back there. I know we had a big response after this last meeting that we did, and we had a lot of progress in the creek, but that lasted about a week or two, and then everything's back to normal, and all the people are back there. So we need either constant patrol, or we need to fence off the area so they can't get back there in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mull. Next speaker is Mr. Charles Walter.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I wish at a forum like this it could be more like public affirmation comments, but in reality it's public fear comments. And a couple of years ago, about 2.5 years ago, spent my life savings to put a down payment on a home in Santa Ana. I'm also on West Park Lane on the same street as Eric. And I'm just tired of living in fear. I mean, I know you guys hear so many of these comments, but back in April, fence burned down. It was due to homeless. Every single day, I'm going back there having to shoo people away. And they're back there. I'm just at a kind of a boiling point of frustration. And I know you guys are really trying to come up with solutions to help us. And I know you have, several, I believe Councilman Solorio, you were in our neighborhood recently. But we're frustrated. A lot of us are at our wits' end. We don't know where you guys stand. We don't know, we know resources are maybe coming, but a lot of us feel like we're in the shadows of what the status updates are. And frankly, being in those shadows, it's kind of giving me a reason to start thinking about calling another city home. I was really excited about Santa Ana when I first moved here. I think it is a great city. It's full of diversity, and but I'm kind of losing the wind in my sails here. And I share, a number of my neighbors are here, and they share that same fear that we do. We're just tired of living in fear every day. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Last speaker is Mr. Chris Schmidt.
Good evening. Chris Schmidt, representing the Windsor Village Neighborhood Association. I have attended several of these public safety meetings, and I hear some of the same people here tonight talking about concerns about fires in the Santiago Creek, and then 3 days later there's a news article that an arson arrest has been made. They voice concerns about the Happy Time Internet Cafe on 17th and Towner, and the whole SWAT team raids it and there's an arrest. I live on the opposite side of town, and I hate to do this to divide my city. I don't believe that my side of the city is getting the same resources or responses. I have the same fires in the riverbed that I've reported numerous times underneath the McFadden and Edinger Street Bridge, Last year, there were 3 fires under the First Street Bridge that I'm told by Public Works created about $150,000 in damage. Yet there's no arrest in the riverbed. The Orange County Sheriff isn't there. The Internet Cafe at Harbor and First Street is still operating. I don't know what we need to do to address these issues. When I send an email, I get a phone call. Well, how do you know your neighborhood isn't getting the same resources? I said, well, I can't tell you that because your system won't give me the data that I keep asking for. I've routinely asked for crime incidents. I've sent an email to the PIO for the police department. There were 2 major incidents in Centennial Park. A person was almost beat to death with a skateboard. Another person was ran over by a car, yet they're not on crime mapping. When I send Mr. Battaglia an email, nothing comes back. Again, I am trying to help improve the quality of life and safety of my neighborhood. I just don't think that my area of the city gets the same response. Laura, how long have we been talking about prostitution? They walk in my neighborhood now. I'm about a half a mile from her. I would appreciate that if I got me and Laura in our neighborhoods got the same response as certain other areas of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next speaker, Mark McLaughlin. Is Mark not here?
He's right behind.
Okay. So then we'll go with Janelle McLaughlin.
Thank you very much. I'm speaking as a resident. I live at 2415 North Riverside Drive. Last Saturday, we walked in from coming in from dinner, and I heard the friendly crackling of eucalyptus, and we had a fire behind our house again. And what I need advice is, because it took 20 minutes for water to be put onto that fire. Maybe somebody explained that previously. We called, they ask your address, we give the address. Then we give a second address to where the fire is, and we give directions how to get to the fire. And this particular evening, we had the fire trucks come to Riverside, which we told them the fire access was over at West Park Lane. And then fire people are walking up and down Riverside, knocking on doors, trying to get access. But that's not where the fire was. And there is no access. There's 20 feet walls. So then by the time that you flag them around and you say it's on West Park Lane, and they go, where are we now? Are we on Riviera? No. Are we on River Lane? No. And the fire department has to look at their phone and say, oh, we're on Riverside. What's the name of that street over there? Well, we know that our neighbors on those streets have called for the for the fire department as well. So we have 4 or 5 fire people on the deck of the neighbor's house going, oh yeah, look, oh yeah, it is. But no hoses on it, no action taken to it. Our great neighbors, my husband went over and got hoses, and neighbors jumped fences, and I'm sure you've heard this because I know Eric's here, jump fences, and those guys put that fire out. They took it from going up into the trees, and they put that fire out to the point that it was just a ground fire. It was no longer in a tree or going up. So, Mr. McLaughlin, I'm speaking for you, so would you like to join me? So, my understanding is Mark went out to the front of West Park Lane, and there was the fire truck and the chief battalion. And he's going, where are those guys going, walking up the street with axes and everything? And he said, well, they're looking for access. And so Mark says, we're down here with our hoses. Access is right here. And so there was a delay there of not putting the hoses to the fire or setting up the hoses. Truly, whatever your time frame is, it was over 20 minutes before there was a drop of water from the fire department. It was like a Keystone Cops, and I really mean that. If you tell us that when we call, we don't give our address. When they say, what is your address, ma'am? And then every time I say, well, the fire is at this address, I get corrected, and they say, what is your address? And so no matter if you say, please don't come to this address, you won't have access. Teach us how to do this, because this is our 15th fire in, 3 months? And we need your help and better than 20 minutes time.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin.
Thank you.
Mr. McLaughlin, I have a card here for you. Would you like to speak? As he comes up, I just wanted to address the public. During public comments, we don't answer questions and so forth, so I didn't want you guys to think we're not listening to you. In fact, we want to have these meetings because this is important for us to be able to then debrief with the other folks in our staff.
Yeah, okay. My name is Mark McLaughlin. I live at 2415 Riverside Drive, and I think my wife has covered a lot of the items, but the reality of it is that number one is it really took at least 15 to 20 minutes before any fireman. At first I'm going to step back. Before the fire truck showed up, there was a fire investigator that showed up who was at another scene in Santa Ana down the street. And then he showed up at the fire, and basically, I think if I talked to the neighbors, he said, I'll help put out the fire, and he stood there with the garden hose putting out the fire. In the meantime, the fire trucks are still not there. And when they finally got to the site, they really did sit around for about 10 minutes. And I asked, why aren't you pulling hoses to just go and get in the back? And by the time I talked to the fire inspector for 10 minutes, the battalion chief, at that point in time, they just had put the hoses out to hose the fire on the side of the creek, on that side of the creek. And what we keep on telling the fellows from 71, House 71, is you can't get access through Riverside Drive. You have to get access through Park Lane. And we keep on saying that. And you had 3 firemen and the battalion chief at our next door neighbor on Riverside Drive going, how do we get access to this fire? And we said, you got to go over to Park Lane. And so it's just kind of discouraging when it continually becomes an issue where, like my wife said, we're asked what address we're at, and then the firemen say, well, they have to show up at our address because that's where the address that called in the fire. And, that's the same, that was what the fire inspector told me. He said, we're going to go to the house that called in the fire. And we said, but we tell you not to come to, well, we have to come to that house. That's what the fire inspector told me. So again, it's we need to have some kind of rules, some kind of, discussion as to what's the best way we can do this, because it continues to happen. It continues to be a problem. And this fire, you can go down there, it was about half the size of what it was when it finally got put out in the very beginning. And frankly, if somebody had been there from the fire department, I think it would have been taken care of a lot quicker. But because we had garden hoses and we had 3 of them, and we were hooking these up to people's hoses at the houses, it took, it was just a little bit of water, not a lot of water. So at this point in time, again, we're just saying, give us some kind of guideline as to what we can do on this. More importantly, what are we going to do to get people out of the creek? That's the bottom line. Fires don't start by themselves. Fires start by people, and we just need to stop them and basically get the people out of the creek. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin, for taking the time. Thank you for all the speakers, and we certainly will have conversations with this with our staff as well. I'd like to go ahead and go to item number 1, the approval of the minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We go on to item number 2, discussion of OCFA Board Member Villegas' proposed amendment to the OCFA Fire Service contract to allow city input in selection of Santa Ana Division Chief, and B, discuss procedure to evaluate existing contract and service alternatives. So I'll turn it over to our co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I'd like to start off by welcoming Chief Adams. He's our new division chief here for the city of Santa Ana. And if I can give a little background on this, so bear with me. So there was a division chief promotion, or our division chief was promoted to assistant chief over at OCFA, and that left a vacancy here. So I was contacted by OCFA if we could please send someone from our city to sit in on the interview, which was going to be taking place for a selection for our new chief here. So I decided to, since I'm the board member, the director on there, I sent Chief Valentine because it's my thinking that our division chief from fire and our police chief, they have to work together. And I believe that Chief Valentine recognizes leadership when he sees it. So we sent him to sit on the board. Now this, without getting into too much of the personnel issue, because we're walking a fine line on that, and I'm speaking about this because this was on the open session of the last OCFA board, which took place on Thursday the 27th last week. And Chief Valentine sat on the interview, and he was told, what, sir, that everyone there was qualified and that this was a selection for fit. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so we're told there everyone there is qualified, and this is just for the city of Santa Ana. There was a question about the city of Santa Ana, and Santa Ana was invited to sit at the interview. It was a little, when I was told how the interview process went, I was a little taken back because it's very unusual for the ultimate decision maker, which was the fire chief himself, the new fire chief for OCFA, which is Chief Fennessy. He was sitting on the board. Now, Chief Fennessy is, he's the ultimate decision maker, but on the panel, besides our police chief, was the assistant chiefs, which they are all at-will employees. It's my feeling that if the chief were to make a decision and he's surrounded by at-will employees, they're kind of tend to gravitate to where he's going because they got to keep their job. That's my take on it. So after the interviews took place, we had an input on who we thought should be coming to Santa Ana, and ultimately the person that our chief recommended, he was not picked. And we really thought that this person who we wanted to come over to our city was about fit, because we're told that these folks are all qualified. We need someone that's going to come here and work with our staff, work with our city manager, and so on and so forth. Let me remind you that the city of Santa Ana is 27.2 square miles with 343,000 residents, 500,000 population between Monday and Friday because of work. We're a large city. We're number 11 in the state. So this position is very, very important. And the person that we wanted had worked at Santa Ana Fire for a long time, speaks Spanish, and he knows the city. So without getting too much into it, that's who our chief recommended. He thought he did well. We didn't get him. So I ended up having conversations with the chief, Chief Hennessy, and I told him that we really wanted this person to come here. After all, ladies and gentlemen, we do pay $40 million a year for OCFA to give us fire services. $40 million a year, and you have no say because of our contract. The contract states that the chief has the ultimate say. And I agree. I understand that the chief's going to have the ultimate say, but this is supposed to be a partnership between our city and OCFA. After all, we're the customer. Once in a while, the customer has to be right. I give OCFA all the respect, and Chief Adams is here joining us with a great reputation. He's working down south. But he was working down there as a division chief. Because we didn't want a certain person to come over in the interview process, Chief Adams was sent over here to be with us, and so here he is. I thought that wasn't fair, that we have no say in who's going to come and work in our city. After all, this city is very, very big. We have 10 fire stations here. Very, very large city. So I asked the chair of the board if he could please put our contract on the agenda. Well, he did not. He said, let's go to closed session first. So there I go closed session. There's about 23 cities. That means 23 elected officials are on this big table, and I have to sit there and plead my case if I could please change or amend my contract where we have a say for us to have a say in who comes to work in our city. Well, that didn't go very well. It's tough. All the other cities, they have to share a division chief. So like the city of Aliso Viejo, which has about 53,000 residents, that's about the size of my ward, by the way. Yeah, because we're 343,000. So, they all share a division chief. As a matter of fact, that's where Chief Adams came from. Aliso Viejo, and who else did you serve? Lake Forest. Yeah. I talked to a lot of folks down there. They say you do an excellent job, and they're very, very happy with you. So, they have to share. Here in Santa Ana, we pay for our own division chief. We don't share with anyone else. That's how big our city is. So I asked to amend the contract, didn't happen. But then I asked for them to put it on the open sessions last Thursday so I could sit there and plead my case in front of everyone and get an official no. Well, there was a lot of back and forth. Maybe we could change this, change the contract to say we advise. Well, we already advise who we want. But then OCFA, and they're going to tell you different because I have it here on their staff report, they were saying, well, actually, and no offense, they were saying actually the interview was not for a selection for Santa Ana. It was actually a promotion. And it is true. It was a promotion interview. But if it's a promotion interview, hey, I'm all for it. The chief should have the say on that. And I totally agree. But our say is who's going to come here. So you give us a pool of people who you say are qualified, and then we should have a say who's going to come down here. Because our city is very, very unique. It's funny, but if you think about it, this city has been a member of OCFA for 6 years. And in 6 years, we've had 7 fire chiefs or division chiefs. That means we're changing a chief less than a year. I don't know who's going to be here next year. What I am asking for is stability. We pay a lot of money. We're a big city. I had one of the mayors, I won't say who, one of the mayors on the board was telling me, well, you're a victim of success. Look, we're not a training ground, I shot back. We're not a training ground. Yeah, this city is great. We have a lot of things that happen here. This is a huge city, and I hate to say it, but it's very unfortunate, but we had a plane crash here. We got flying cars, all kinds of stuff. Things happen here. We can't be changing chiefs all the time. And I have nothing but respect for the OCFA. As a matter of fact, everyone knows I work for the sheriff, and when I was put on that board and I was asked about the sheriff's air operations versus the OCFA, I was the first guy to write a letter in favor of OCFA for make sure that everyone went back to the old MOU, supporting, and I took a hit for it. But you know why? Because it's the right thing to do. I believe that the fire should be doing the fire thing and the police got to do their thing, or the sheriff needs to do that. Everyone stay in their lane. That was my thought. And I stuck up. So can't say I'm not for OCFA, but I just thought it was very unfair that we don't have a say. So the question went before the board. I pleaded the case. There was only the mayor of Yorba Linda, the mayor of Westminster, and Supervisor Spitzer abstained, and the rest were all no's. So when that happens, when you have to ask 20 other elected officials, you have to sit there and plead for them to allow you to amend your contract. And they don't know our city. I don't tell people in Seal Beach or in Lake Forest or in Irvine. As a matter of fact, Irvine's had the same chief for 5 years. Supervisor Spitzer brought that up in the meeting. How is it that Irvine's had their same chief for 5 years, and I think you were down in your area for about 4 years, but over here we're getting a new chief every year or less? And no one could explain that to me. And I think that's unfair. I'm not asking for someone to come here and I have to lock them in and give them parameters that you could only stay here, or I want you to stay here 10 years. That's not my place. But if you could come here and be here for 2, 3, 4 years, give us a little stability, that's great. But they weren't doing that. They weren't going to play with us. So I'm asking for our city manager to please look into possibly bringing our fire services, our fire department back. I know we lost them. And if you can give me a quick rundown of what happened, why our fire department left. Robert,
Sure.
You were here during that time. If you can speak to that.
Good afternoon, council members. Yes, I was here present during the outsourcing of fire to Orange County Fire Authority. The city was facing a budget deficit that was significant in nature, and the city was looking for all opportunities in which to save money. One of the items that came about was the collaboration and partnership with Orange County Fire Authority, which could potentially result in about $11 million on an annual basis in ongoing savings. The item was presented to the full city council, was negotiated amongst the various bargaining groups, and ultimately the decision was made to outsource the function. The function of paramedic services was also outsourced to care ambulance services. To this date, we have generated significant savings as a result of this transition out to OCFA.
We've saved about $13 million that first year, correct? Or about $10 million, something
We
like that.
estimated around 10 to 11 million because
10 to
we did
11
have some
million.
transition costs.
Okay, and we own our own fire stations. We own the property where they're at. And we saved that money because we didn't, the contract that Santa Ana Fire had with the city, they had to keep so many people on duty, correct? And when we transitioned over, we saved all that money because we didn't have the contract was different. The amount of personnel that need to be on duty, is that correct?
Constant staffing was an issue. The amount of overtime that was being paid was highlighted as
So
an
if we were to bring back our fire department and renegotiate how many personnel need to be in the city, we have that, we continue with the savings.
It all depends on the direction from the city council, obviously from the city manager as well, and how that new MOU with staff would be arranged.
See, at OCFA, I've been there a couple of years. They have a big board right now. The new chief is expanding his division chiefs and another assistant chief, I believe, or some more spots. And that means that we have to pay their salary. We also have to pay their retirement. There's OSERS costs to go with the retirement system. We also, in the overhead, we have to pay for at least a small portion, but we pay for the airships. We don't use any helicopters here in this city. I checked with my historian over at Santa Ana Fire, who's been there 30 years. They've never used, I think the last time they used an airship for here was for transport, and it was Lifeline back in the early 80s. Now it's Mercy Air or something like that. But here, we don't use an airship. We just drive the person to the hospital. The burn center is here in UCI now. It's no longer in LA. So we wouldn't use this. And we don't do a water drop here. Is that right, Chief? You don't do a water drop in the structural because you cause a lot of damage. You can hurt people. And the only two brush areas that we have here is Santiago Creek, and if anything, where there's a lot of trees is Centennial Park, which is surrounded by the school and other structures. But it would be contained. And I checked, if we were to have a fire there, what would happen? Would it get out of hand? It would be contained because of the asphalt. And we would not be doing that. So here we are paying some money for all these airships, or the helicopters, and the pilots, and the retirement, and the people who have to do the fueling, and the maintenance of the fuel. All that adds up. So I say we look into it and see what our options are. And so I would like a report back. I don't know how soon we can get something up and running, but I'm gonna ask every week until we get something. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think, first and foremost, for those of you, I served on the Orange County Fire Authority Board, and my tenure was probably 3 months. And let me tell you why it was 3 months. It is probably one of the most dysfunctional boards I've ever been on. when you have how many cities? 23? 23, and everyone wants to talk, and everyone has their own issues, and they're tiny little cities, and you can't do something for your own city because they block you. It's a little rough. The reason Councilmember Villegas is so upset is because it was logical to bring that other person here to our city. Bilingual, knew the city. Some people say that there was a possibility that that person wasn't placed here because he was originally from our own fire department, back when it was Santa Ana Fire Department, and that there's not an urgency or a motivation to promote those folks from within, which I hope that's not the case. But I think something that we have to really take a look at, and I don't want people to be offended, I just want to let you know that there's a truth behind this. When you have a city like Irvine, who's had a fire chief, for 5 years, and Santa Ana has had one removed, has been shifting constantly, you have to ask yourself, what's the reason that some cities get treated differently than the brown city in Santa Ana? And notice what I just said, the brown city in Santa Ana. I said it. I'll put it out there. I think the Orange County Fire Authority has to really take a look at this. Are they treating us differently because we're a minority city? And I don't like to throw that out there, but when you have the proof of 5 years stability and we don't have that here, there's a problem. So I'm going to support Mr. Villegas because he's done the legwork. And he's going to say one more thing, but I think we've had it. We're not going to be pushed around, City Manager. That's not how we operate here in Santa Ana. We're from Santa Ana. We grew up here. We want good, solid, justifiable reasoning for decisions that are made that are going to service our population. It's that simple. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And real quick, I too, I hate to say this, but I said it to them privately, but I'm going to just say it here openly. I think there was some kind of bias going on because I used to hear that the Santa Ana fire guys that came over to OCFA, people would tell them, even our dispatchers, hey, this is in Santa Ana. You know, our Santa Ana was a Class A fire department. That's a very, very top-notch fire department. We had SWAT medics. We had, our swift water rescue. We have to think about that because we do need that. OCFA provides it. We're a very, very good fire department. Maybe it was the union and the way things worked out didn't benefit the city, and they didn't budge when we were having those financial difficulties here at the city. But on an ultimately left, when they joined OCFA, they got the double dip, as we call it. They retire from here, and then now they're collecting a check over there. And I warned Garden Grove. I told them, this might happen to you because they want to come over. So beware. I'm not going to tell them what to do. It's not my place. Just look at what's happening to me. They have 7 fire stations over there. Right now it's put on hold. I'm going to see what happens. I don't know. My thing is, I got to look out for my folks. And I think we could save some money. And I think we should have a say because we need some more stability here. And Chief Adams, you're a fire brush expert? Or you're on some state team, I'm told that.
I'm on a state command team.
State command team. And they moved this man over here because we were having some difficulty over there. And they moved him out of his area. Everyone was very, very happy with him. And his expertise, applies over there. And welcome to Santa Ana. But we're here, it's a little different. And, you know what I noticed? A lot of firefighters come in here, stay a year or two, whatever, and then get some, because we're a very, very active city. And then they go back to their they transfer out and go chill out over there in those fire stations. And that's not fair. That's not right. And I'm not going to stand for it. And so, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So what we are going to do then is direct staff to develop a report and to look at item A and item B and respond back to us to what our options could be. And I stand with Councilman Villegas. When he was telling me about what was happening, I told him 100% I'm behind you. I would like to see other options too, because our contract will expire in a little while. What are other options that we can utilize? I don't want to be held hostage from an organization that's unwilling to work with us. So let's take a look at that. And with that,
All right, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Chair.
We'll go ahead and bring back a report that outlines some options, and then we can pick one or two and recommend them to the full council, and we can move forward with that.
thank you, sir. We're going to move up item number 9, and this is an update on police officer recruitment and hiring. Manager Robert Carroll is here to speak to us, and I think you have another engagement, right, that you have to attend to, so go ahead, floor is yours.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I can just jump in real quick. And before we get started on the actual presentation, I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce, excuse me, Corporal Pedro Duran. He is our new recruitment officer for the police department. You'll recall about a year ago, we dedicated a full-time resource to dedicate their time and effort on nothing but recruitment efforts to really look at opportunities outside of the box. And so the person that was there before was Corporal Oscar Lazardi, who you all know very well. He's moved on, has been promoted since, did such a great job. And so Corporal Pete Duran is now in his place. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience, was selected for the position amongst other folks, and we're really excited. He's hit the ground running. You'll see some of the efforts that he's put in place. I wanted to highlight this banner here that's on the screen. Just looking at different ways to grab people's attention, graphics. You'll notice it should come across eye-popping, SAPD. You've got 5 young officers there. We've got diversity of all kinds illustrated with 2 local products included in this piece. We've got the iconic water tower in the backdrop, and then most important dates for our recruitment website. So you'll see this on all social media platform that we have, and this is just one piece that we'll illustrate to you as the presentation is covered by Robert Carroll. But again, I just wanted to introduce Corporal Pete Duran. He has hit the ground running, is bilingual, is going to be taking trips up and down the state and wherever we need to get not only officers to fill the ranks, but the right officers to fill our ranks. You'll see in the content that we're awash, essentially, 19 for 19. We've hired 19 have left the organization. So that is actually a little slower than previous years when we were looking at about 30 that left the organization. We still have the last quarter of the year. But I'm confident that in looking in non-traditional sources of recruitment, we'll get to where we need to go. Santa Ana College president, Dr. Rose, has committed to me personally that she will highlight our recruitment efforts and put this information in the hands of students at Santa Ana College, as has Dr. John Hernandez at the Santiago Community College in the city of Orange as well. So with that, Robert.
Great, thank you, Chief. And thank you for the opportunity to provide this update on police officer hiring once again. Just a quick overview on the numbers for fiscal year 18-19. General fund has 370 sworn positions budgeted there. Our special revenue funds, including the downtown, the civic center, we have 11 police officers budgeted there. 2 police officers budgeted in our UASI grant for a total of 383 sworn officers in Santa Ana PD. We have 322 filled positions, 61 vacancies. As the chief mentioned, through September of this year, we've hired 19 officers, which includes 12 recruits and 7 laterals, and we've had 19 separate. In terms of our injured on-duty officers, currently at 16, 11 off work, 5 light duty. We have a lot in the pipeline, both in the academy and in the field training program. We got 3 recruits in class 232 graduating this month, 5 recruits in class 233 graduating in January, and 1 recruit in class 234, which graduates in March. And there are currently 11 trainees in the field training program for a total of 20 at various stages of academy and FTO. This is an example of some of the great work that Corporal Duran and his team, are doing, in addition to our partners, City HR and our PD HR team. To date, over 40 recruitment events attended, and this is just a snapshot of what we're doing here. Santa Ana College events, East LA College recruitment event, continuous presence at Camp Pendleton, job fairs, Golden West College recruitment event. We've been present at LA Fitness and 24-hour fitness gyms, a continuous presence at Miramar Marine Corps Air Station. And when I say continuous presence, when they have events every other month or so, we're there representing Santa Ana PD. We attended a motor rodeo in Huntington Beach. We attended an event at San Joaquin Valley College criminal justice program, where we had a lot of interest in our department, both in the sworn and correctional positions. San Diego State Fall Career and Internship Fair. We attended 2 dates there. And in addition, going forward for the final quarter of this calendar year, we got several events scheduled at UC San Diego, those 3 Cal State University system events, a Cerritos College Job Fair event, and USC Veterans Students Job Fair. In terms of our social media efforts, here's another good example of what the team is putting together. The first Facebook or Instagram post there on the left is a LA Fitness event. We have 2 social media posts from our Camp Pendleton events, and then just a Facebook posting on our hiring efforts for the finals graphic up there. Again, we have a hiring expo for Santa Ana PD. It's going to be October 27th from 9 a.m. to 1. And at this event, we're going to have personnel from all specialized units within the department, including patrol, SWAT, our gang unit, special investigations, our K-9 unit, homicide, mounted, directed patrol, CSI, corrections, and dispatch. And we're actually going to have the written test for police officer administered on the 27th at that event. In terms of adding additional resources to the recruitment effort, we've added 1 full-time background investigator, which we've completed the recruitment. That person has started full-time. We added that position in the 18-19 budget. The chief has authorized an additional sworn investigator to be assigned to the backgrounds unit. We've implemented 2 new contracts with outside background investigation firms to conduct some of our non-sworn backgrounds, and restructured our backgrounds unit to better distribute workload. All this to add capacity in backgrounds and in the hiring process. In terms of the Western states average, Santa Ana, we're at 0.95 officers per 1,000 residents. In comparison, the ratios to some of the other local cities there, you'll see Pomona at 1.06 officers per 1,000, Ontario at 1.74 officers per 1,000, and Pasadena 1.75 officers per 1,000. So still, Santa Ana, we're still striving to get those numbers up. The Western states average, you'll see up there on top, is 1.8, is of course ideal, where we'd like to be. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Councilmember Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One quick question. What did you find is the reason that we cannot find qualified applicants?
Well, there's not one. It would be, I believe, a lot.
All right, give me the top 3.
Top 3, we've seen a drop in applications. We've seen individuals struggling with background issues.
And the background issues, what are you seeing is the number one problem in that area?
I don't think I can put my finger on one particular thing, but drug use is an issue.
Especially with the marijuana law changing?
Especially with marijuana changing and just the perception regarding marijuana, thinking it's legal and allowable in California and for every profession, when then that's not the reality. Individuals individuals. I know a lot of people in our department have grown up always knowing they wanted to be a police officer. We're not seeing that as much anymore as with the applicants that we're seeing.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and go on to item number 4, revision of SAMC, the loud and ruckus noise. Assistant City Attorney Tamara Bogosian, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Chair and council members. I'm going to allow Deputy Chief Gominski to essentially provide an update. I'm available to answer any questions. Just as background, if you recall, we had provided the committee numerous recommended revisions to the current ordinance 10-153. So I'll allow Deputy Chief Gominski to proceed, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members. Again, appreciate the opportunity to come forward and again discuss what we have been talking about and working on for about a year. The overarching concept of changing 10-153 centers around our desire to hold property owners accountable for the conduct that occurs on their property. Consistently and constantly, when we go out and deal with people that are having parties at residences, the issue is, who do we hold responsible for the conduct? Is it the DJ? Is it the person who hired the DJ? Or is it just the drunk person who's having the party? We experience problems again and again with who to try to hold accountable for this conduct. As such, we believe that the best way to move forward in holding individuals responsible for violations of loud and raucous noise is to again look at the property owner. We had come before you, discussed this in the past, and some issues that you asked us to come back with most specifically were, how did we plan on dealing with repeat calls for service? The main issue was, how many times is it until somebody gets cited and held accountable? It is our ongoing belief as staff that we will continue to provide one warning. Subsequently, we will go out and attempt to close the party. If possible, we would issue citations. However, we would then, after 2 times at a single location, we would then look to start taking enforcement action against the property owners. It doesn't matter whether it's a manager of an apartment complex or the property owner, the law would allow for either case, and we would have to look at what the best means were in enforcing that. However, we do believe that, given the way that the current law is written, we will have the flexibility to go in either direction depending upon what is necessary to try to solve the problem. Did you, council members, have any additional questions that you needed us to answer? Again, our request is that you forward this to the entire city council for a vote on altering our current law.
Councilman Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Deputy Chief Gominski, for the report. And yes, I agree, it's good. It should be moving forward. My question is for the chief. We had a member of the public address this issue, and can you speak to that?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I obviously have had conversations with Ms. Fonseca, and she is correct, both as the deputy chief and now as the chief. And I would really have to do research to validate whether, in fact, we've only cited one instance for this municipal code. So I can certainly do that. Officers have been reminded, encouraged, and instructed to enter premise information, because that's really the only way that we'll know that we've been there, what we saw, what we did, who we spoke to. So when we come back, we can take that follow-up action. The response times to these types of calls has improved considerably. In fact, by Mrs. Fonseca's own comments during our previous meetings. So that's been shared as well. So we continue to prioritize it. I think this step in having direction to have the entire council review the revisions is a very good one, because we can actually hold the owners of these residences and duplexes and the such accountable.
So I believe the question was, are the officers, are they documenting in the CAD? Are we keeping an eye on that, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, very good. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
So we will be bringing this up to the city council, the full city council, so that we could amend this procedure here. Okay.
You'll probably have to take a vote on the item to move it to the.
So I'm going to call for a vote.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. It'll go up to the council. Let's go to item number 6, update on prostitution-related enforcement.
Thank you, sir. That's me as well. Following the July 24th, 2018 community meeting, the Santa Ana Police Department, as well as the city in general, made several commitments to the residents of that area. One of the commitments was that we would continue to utilize overtime enforcement officers to specifically address the problems the community was experiencing directly. Over the past 2 months, the Santa Ana Police Department has made 146 arrests for prostitution-related activity, made 5 felony pimping/human trafficking arrests. I again would like to remind everybody that a pimping or human trafficking arrest generally equates to 10 to 20 years in prison for these individuals that have actually trafficked women into this lifestyle. During the enforcement operations, we've made 2 arrests for probation and auto theft. Additionally, instead of just looking to enforce criminal law, we've looked at addressing the Johns and the people that are interested in driving around the area to see the show. We've wrote 31 traffic cites specifically to individuals we believe are involved in this conduct. And we have arrested 4 juveniles from prostitution in the past 2 months. Additionally, we agreed with the neighborhood. The commercial complex on the northwest corner of Harbor and Hazard had become an attractive nuisance. We had videos, we had pictures, we have actual personal knowledge of the conduct that was occurring. In support of the police department's mission, Attorney Bogosian and Attorney Nellison of the City Attorney's Office drafted correspondence to the owner of that property. The owner decided that he did not wish to enter into full litigation and would rather spend his money in remedying the issues we've brought to his attention than spend money on attorneys fighting what we knew we would win. We have had 3 different conversations, meetings with that property owner over the past 2 weeks. During that time, we have discussed a laundry list of quite pricey items he's agreed to take care of.
Deputy Chief, I would just recommend that we just stay away from litigation at this point and just more general comments.
He's decided he's willing to play along and not get sued. So the police department continues to do exactly what we committed to do, to work on fixing that property and to continue to arrest individuals with as much manpower and resources as we can put into the problem. I'll answer any questions, sir.
Councilmember Villegas.
I just want to thank you for the good work, everyone that's involved in this. Hear a lot of good things, and thank you for the update. That's my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Kaminsky. And part of the reason why we have a meeting every month is because public safety is important. The quality of life of our residents is important. So other committees meet like once every 3 months, but we've chosen to meet monthly, because we also get feedback from the community, and again, then we get to speak to our staff to take action. And I'm sure some of the things that we've heard tonight, we're definitely going to address once again. That brings us up to item 8, the homeless update. Ms. Hafsa Kaka, the floor is yours.
Hi. Good evening, council members. Good evening, committee and members of the public. So I'm going to go pretty brief regarding this, and go kind of quick because we do have quite a robust agenda. So for today, we will be going over high-level update on the quality of life team, update on the Santiago Creek cleanup, update on emergency homeless shelters, Homeless Emergency Aid Program, which is referenced as HEAP, and the Urban Peace Institute Community Safety Forum. A lot of text up there, but bottom line, this just states that we did start, as you know, with the quality of life team back in January of 2018 to address the number of concerns. Requests related to the municipal code violations, property storage, and improper uses of public and private property. The multidisciplinary team, as you know, comprises of SAPD, Parks and Rec, Public Works, and Community Development, so on and so forth. To this date, we have continued to be successful, especially with the assistance of the SAPD in contacting 1,128 individuals and doing robust outreach to get them integrated into the system of care, along with responding to 1,934 locations to ensure that there is a better quality of life for Santa Ana at large, addressing a number of encampments as well. The Santiago Creek cleanup effort, that really spearheaded back in May when we saw that there was a need for cleanup project with rubbish and debris in a massive 2-day cleanup. That too was a very successful project cleanup, and so with that we had especially our quality of life team along with the interdisciplinary team working with the healthcare agency and folks. We were able to clean up also on August 15th, 2018, and we were able to remove 3 tons of debris, 10 hypodermic needles, and 8 homeless individuals were encountered with 0 accepting services. But again, this is just to show that there has been regular cleanups because of the success that we have seen. Update on emergency homeless shelter. So there's 2. I just want to make it very clear. There's one that I'm going to reference as a permanent shelter, and there's another that I'm going to reference as an interim shelter. This has all been pretty exciting, back-to-back council meetings. So if you have attended the council meetings, you know exactly where we're going. On September 4th, the City Council approved the Memorandum of Understanding with the County of Orange to transition the Courtyard Emergency Homeless Shelter, which is right here across the street, to a new location to expand homeless shelter beds for the City of Santa Ana. This is going to be 600 low barrier shelter, which will include an increase of 125 beds reserved for Santa Ana. This has many, many benefits, one being that it's going to mitigate the negative impacts of homelessness in Santa Ana. It's going to provide Santa Ana unsheltered homeless population with shelter and supportive services, so hopefully we will see a correlation of decreased impact in the community with the onset of this emergency shelter. Establish a long-term collaborative effort between the city and county, which we always strive to achieve, minimize the migration of homeless individuals into Santa Ana, ensure bed availability for Santa Ana's use, and most importantly, just continue the Santa Ana Armory program. So that's going to be exciting. As to mirror off of that, essentially that will take about 12 to 18 months. It's going to take some time. So with that, the city recognizes the need for an interim emergency homeless shelter to ensure that there's a safe and stable place for those who are experiencing homelessness, and also to increase the quality of life for individuals who experience a negative impact as residents. So on Tuesday, September 18th, the City Council approved the agreement with Mercy House to operate the interim homeless shelter with a maximum of 200 beds. Mercy House is expected to open 50 beds within 45 days and be fully operational within 60 to 90 days. Mercy House is going to be providing an array of services, including for individuals and families with mental health, medical health, housing navigation, employment services, and really be able to get individuals experiencing homelessness off the streets and into a shelter where they could seek help and essentially improve not only their quality of life, but also, again, improve the quality of life for the greater Santa Ana community who is impacted by homelessness on the streets. This interim emergency shelter will service only Santa Santa Ana referrals, and no walk-ins will be allowed. So we are ensuring that this is going to be a good move for the city. And Mercy House is a very reputable best practices nonprofit organization. We are working diligently behind the scenes to ensure that this is executed seamlessly. Homeless Emergency Aid Program. On September 28th, city staff submitted official application to the state of California to receive $3.69 million from the Homeless Emergency Aid Program. This is authorized by Senate Bill 850, which was signed into law by Governor Brown in June of this year. So everything is moving very quickly. It's intended to provide one-time funding to Continuum of Cares, and Continuum of Cares are essentially the entity within the county that receives the housing urban development dollars to address homelessness and housing, and large cities with populations of over 330 for immediate emergency assistance. So this could not have happened at a better time. We are experiencing a really pivotal moment when it comes to homelessness and being able to address it. In order to retrieve the funds, and due to the overwhelming homeless population, back in August 21st, we were able to, our council adopted the shelter crisis resolution. So everything was very much on time, and we are ahead of the game. The HEAP funds will be utilized in the establishment of the permanent homeless shelter in collaboration with the County of Orange. And then lastly, Urban Peace Institute. We had a community safe forum. We did not have it. It was actually hosted by Urban Peace Institute, and we were asked to be represented. We, including our chief of police and also the SAUSD chief of police, Anastasia Smith, myself, also individuals, Juan Placencia, who's a youth resident, Stephen Kim from Project Kim, and other individuals from nonprofits that primarily highlighted homelessness, immigration enforcement, youth and gang crime, police, and community relations. We were well received, and the event highlighted the several efforts that the city is doing in order to improve the quality of life. And that is a picture of the event. And I would just really like to say that that individual, Juan Placencia, who's a youth resident, his testimony was very empowering. He actually informed how he experienced homelessness and how he was open to the climate of being a vulnerable population, but he was able to get back on his feet. He now works with the city, and it's a success story. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Any questions?
Quick comment, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Keika, for your good work. And in speaking with Judge Carter, he is very impressed with the work from all of our staff here at the City of Santa Ana. Thank you again.
Thank you. And the only thing I want to ask our chief is, it seems that Santiago Creek area really needs constant supervision. So if there's anything that you can do with your staff to assure that we have more supervision up in that area, I'd appreciate that.
Will do.
Thank you. And I apologize to everyone. I did skip item number 3. So we're going to go to item number 3 right now. It's discussion pertaining to draft ordinance, narcotics and gang-related crime eviction program. Deputy Chief Eric Paulson and our City Attorney Tamara Bogosian, you all have the floor.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Tinajero, Councilmember Villegas. Yes, we're here to discuss tonight the draft ordinance regarding narcotics and gang-related crime eviction program. Gang-related activity remains a top priority, a top safety concern for our residents in Santa Ana. So what we have done is work together to come up with a draft ordinance here to help combat some of these concerns. We've been facing a number of policy and law changes throughout the state, and this is one way that we can begin to maybe make our residents feel a little bit more confident, a little bit more safe in our city as it pertains to gang-related and narcotics crime. We've dubbed it guidance as our acronym here. It's a tough title of an ordinance to come up with a good acronym, but we thought it was appropriate because this is exactly what our property owners need, is guidance on how to properly secure the safety of their property for the residents that are generating revenue for them, but more importantly, just the overall safety of everybody that's living, working, and visiting our fine city. So essentially what this ordinance would do, this draft ordinance would do, is address some of the concerns that are facing our community right now. Fear of retaliation as it pertains to gang-related crime is a real fear of our residents, and by drafting this ordinance, it would take the ball out of their hands essentially and put it in ours. which is what we should be doing is law enforcement and working with our city attorney's office is protecting our fine folks and not putting it in their hands, but putting it in our hands. One of the issues that our property owners face is they cannot pursue legal action on their own because witnesses are unwilling to come forward, again, falling back on that retaliation. This, again, puts the ball in our hands and allows us basically to force the owners to take action. We will become the witnesses. We're not going to be scared, intimidated, or fear retaliation from anybody as your law enforcement agency here in the city of Santa Ana. What this ordinance will do is it helps eliminate public nuisances affecting the community. It's already been implemented in a number of cities throughout the state of California. It holds landlords responsible for activities occurring on their property, specifically, as I've mentioned, gang and narcotics crimes, protects residential communities from drugs and criminal activity, and it allows the city to initiate an abatement program or abatement proceedings, against tenants using a property to store controlled substances, weapons, ammunitions, or just what we deem as public nuisance or public safety concerns. Purpose and objective of this is to combat illegal drug activity, drug-related nuisance activity, and gang-related crimes, to protect the fine citizens' right to use and enjoy their property, to improve quality of life in the community, to promote safety for Santa Ana residents, family, and homes, to provide long-term change and lasting benefits to the community instead of a temporary solution. Oftentimes in high-density housing, as we see a lot of these areas of concern rising, we will enforce the law, we'll arrest, but it's a temporary solution. These folks are right back home and continue the same activities that they were before. Ordinance specifics. It's going to require that the city manager deliver written notice detailing the violation to both the landlord and the offending tenant. The notice to the landlord must include documentation to help landlord prosecute offending tenants. So this isn't willy-nilly. We're going to have source documentation to support our observations, to support what we're recommending, and then, of course, be able to testify under oath in court what we saw and what we reported on. Landlord has 30 days to do a handful of things. Serve offending tenant 3-day notice to stop illegal activity, or a 30-day notice to vacate the premises, and diligently prosecute the offending tenant. If the landlord doesn't feel that he or she wants to go down this road, he or she can file an appeal with the city manager contesting the violation. That's it in a nutshell. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Myself or Ms. Bogosian can certainly help.
Councilman Villegas.
I'd just like to hear from the Assistant City Attorney.
Is there any specific question, council member, or just generally?
This is the, we're using this is the same thing we've used on the motel, correct? On Bristol?
That was under the Drug Den Abatement Act. That's under state code, under the Health and Safety Code. This would be a little bit different because this would be an ordinance that is adopted by the City Council that allows the city to essentially place the burden, certain burdens on the landlord in order to take action against the offending tenants. For example, if the police department provides statistics, information that a particular property has a tremendous amount of calls for service for narcotics activity or for weapons or gang-related activity. This is just a different mechanism of enforcement to remove the nuisance from that property.
I see. And when you need from us today is direction to...
There is no action
There's
item
no
today.
action item. This
was just a discussion. If the committee members want to bring it back, we could provide a draft ordinance with suggestions, and then we can set it for an action item if you so desire.
Okay. Would you like to do that?
Whatever, what would be our next step to implement this then?
I would recommend, with your concurrence, that you bring it back maybe for the next meeting, and we could provide a draft ordinance for the committee to review. Because I would like to do some additional research. That there are several cities that do implement such an ordinance in their cities, and I want to look at the differences and have the best one.
Yes, I was going to say if we can get a couple of cities in the report, but samples of what they do and the difference. That's my comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're going to go to committee member comments. Any comments, Councilmember Villegas?
I had a question for Chief Adams. See, outside. You're up, Chief.
I apologize.
No, no worries. Quick question. It's just for the members of the public regarding the delay in response to the Santiago Creek fire. Do you have anything on that? Because I was hearing a couple of different things from other folks. If you could speak to that, sir.
Yes, yes, sir, and thanks for calling on me. So access, our priorities in this reality are address, access, and time on scene. So, and we're working with some of the folks who are in the audience. When they're reporting these fires in this creek, it's my understanding there's a 20-foot high retaining wall on one side, and then on the other side of the creek, there's better access but more vegetation. And our dispatchers are being told they're getting the address of where the fire is being reported from, and not necessarily getting the address of where the fire is. So what we're going to do to mitigate that situation is myself and Octavio Medina are going to go to our GIS section. We're going to put together a mapping project that outlines that creek, puts every address that abuts that creek on that map, finds the access points from both sides of the creek, so regardless of what side the engine shows up on, they can make access to the creek and take care of any fire issue that may be there. And also teach them how to report the location of the fire, be it on their side or the other side. So I've just heard basically what they do now is when they call 911, they're in a panic and they yell fire. So it doesn't do well. And for the rest of the folks in the audience, this isn't organic for anybody. Calling in an emergency, especially when there's a fire behind your house, we never want you to have to get used to doing that. Obviously, this is happening more than we want it to. So with that, we're going to be involved and well involved, and we're going to put together a plan and teach you and train you what to say, and we'll teach our dispatchers what to take and what to hear. So we have some work to do on this. I will look at the response times and get back to you, sir, and the city manager, and make sure that nothing is taking 20 minutes to get to in your city, because if that's the case, it's unacceptable.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that comment. Real quick to any member of the staff, so regarding the homeless issue and the fires in the back in the creek, is anyone in the public, has this happened before? Or was it recent because of the homeless issue? I mean, we haven't had these problems, correct?
I've only lived there 2 years.
Right.
2 years yet.
I don't think that's ever been an issue.
It's never been an issue before, so it's an issue now until the homeless issues, the current homeless issues.
Stadium and Civic Center.
Right. I just wanted to.
To answer your question.
Yes, sir.
I've been there 25 years. We've had probably at least 15 fires before the homeless were moved from State College. There's been fires in that creek dating back 10, 15 years. And the reason is because we've had homeless underneath the five, or we've had homeless.
Well, we can hear you, Mark. And Mark, I'm glad you're answering the question. I know you've been a long-time resident. Yeah.
You got to realize the red roof in is a drop. So state and federal and county drops the inmates that have been released to the red roof in. They get 30 days to reside in the red roof in, and then where do they end up, Ken? They end up under the 5. And they've been doing that for 20 years? 20 years. And so it's not the whole, we've had more homeless coming into the creek since the riverbed was shut down. No doubt about it. And most of the homeless was, if not all the homeless, were underneath the 5. They were not in the creek.
Thank you for answering the question, Mark. I appreciate it. I know you're a longtime resident. Thank you very much. I just wanted to kind of get the history on that from the folks that are affected by it. And Chief, I know The chair asked for increased patrols. That's not an easy area to patrol on foot. I mean, you need to gear up with boots and tactical gear to walk around there. I get it, but if we would appreciate more patrols. And that's my comment. And thank you to the
All right.
staff, and thank you for all the members of the public that came out to speak today.
I have to echo that. Thank you to the members because you're the eyes and ears out there, and I'm sorry that you're dealing with that still today. We're going to go ahead and go back and see what we can do to mitigate that as much as possible. Thank you for coming out and sharing all the other information as well with the noise ordinance and so forth. We are going to adjourn this meeting, and we are going to meet again next month. And that is going to be on November 13th, and we're going to meet here once again at 5:30. And I hope to hear different comments coming back because we're going to be addressing these issues. So with that, I thank everyone. Have a good evening. Meeting is adjourned.